Great. We'll get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm Warren Wells, Policy and Planning Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. Really happy to have you all out here tonight. Again, apologies for the change of venue. As you saw in my email, I had a COVID exposure on Sunday and just want to keep everybody safe. Still feeling fine. So hopefully for nothing, but just gonna make sure it'd be a bad look. So happy you're all here tonight. So I'm gonna share my screen. I have a presentation here tonight. I'm gonna try to keep the meeting pretty quick. Just participants up so I don't miss anybody. I'll keep my presentation short so I can answer some questions people have, and then you know, get you out of here so you can enjoy your evening. So this is this is night 2 of 2 for the kickoff meetings for the San Rafael local team. Just to give a little brief. Can I go back, please? There we go. Brief overview of what we're going to be up to tonight. Just hopefully for everybody. Talk about Marin County Bicycle Coalition very briefly. Go over our mission. I want to go around and hear from the folks who are here tonight to hear kind of what's bringing you out here, what your interests are. I want to then kind of dig a little bit deeper into what we're imagining this local teams program will look like in San Rafael and hopefully spreading elsewhere. And then take questions, any questions or concerns or curiosities people have, and then outline the next steps. Great, a couple of people come in. Okay, so first up, let me admit a couple more people here. So the Marin County Bicycle Coalition, our mission is to create a healthy, connected, and sustainable Marin by promoting bicycling for everyday transportation and recreation. So, though we have a lot of members, obviously, who come in from the recreation side, we really want to, we want our advocacy to center everybody who's trying to ride a bicycle no matter what. And so for this local teams program, what we're imagining is we need a synthesis of both the people in the community and their local knowledge and interpersonal connections, along with MCBC's expertise in advocacy, understanding of local government, and kind of like the nitty gritty of how projects get developed, which speaking of for myself before going back to grad school and this stuff was really confusing. And even then, there's a lot to understand about when is the right time to advocate for a bike improvement. How, what is the mechanism? What is the time to do this? So we need we're seeing that we can't do this alone. We can't do this work without more people in the community. And we think we can be a real aid to people who are trying to do the work in the community themselves. So I want to go through and just have folks introduce themselves. If you can just say your name, your neighborhood, how do you spend your day, parenting, work, retired, how and where do you ride, and what's the biggest barrier to you or your family in riding bikes? And Phil, I know you said you might have to leave soon, so I'll let you go first.
Sure, thank you. Yeah. My name's Phil Mooney. I came to the one last night, but I wanted to sign in again today just to introduce myself and hear about everybody else, and then I'll get off because I'm solo parenting tonight. But I live in Gerstle Park. I spend my day parenting and working. I'm also on the San Rafael BPAC and the Off-Road Advisory Committee for MCBC. I ride everything and everywhere recreationally on the road and on the mountain bike, and then lots of bike commuting and lots of carting kids around on a cargo bike. And like I said last night, the biggest barrier to me and my family to riding bike is cars, getting away from cars. That's it for me.
Great, thanks, Phil. I'm just going to kind of go down the list as I see it. So Roberta, is it Roberta?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes, so my name's Roberta Blank, and I live in Northbridge, and I'm retired. I ride both road and mountain bike. and all over the place. The biggest barrier to me is the speed and size of the vehicles on the road these days.
Thanks, Roberta. Steve?
I'm Steve Bingham and live in Terra Linda. And unlike most of you, I don't ride all that much. My interest in bicycles came about when my daughter was killed in 2009 in Cleveland biking to work. And I've basically been a road safety, vehicle safety advocate ever since. I organize every year the local Ride of Silence. I'm on the National Board of Ride of Silence. I'm also very active in Families for Safe Streets, which maybe I'll put a link in the chat or you can Google it. And it's interesting that Roberta mentioned the size of vehicles. One of the things that I'm doing right now is Families for Safe Streets was founded in New York a number of years ago by Amy Cohen, whose 12-year-old son was killed in Brooklyn. And it's become a national organization with a number of chapters. And one of the things that we're doing is commenting on NHTSA, National Highway Transportation Safety Agency, is inviting comments on what's called NCAP, New Car Assessment Program. And they rate cars according to safety features. And I encourage all of you, and maybe I can put that link in as well, to check that out. They extended the deadline so individuals can comment until June 8th.
Great,
And one
Steve.
of the issues that all of us are talking about is a humongous size of vehicles. Anyway, I don't want to go on.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. If you want, yeah, if you want to put
Retired.
sorry.
And when I do ride, I ride off-road up in the hills above Terra Linda.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. Nimilan? Am I pronouncing your name right?
Very close. Nimilan.
Nimilan, cool.
Hey, nice to meet everyone. I live in Terra Linda, and let's see, how do I spend my day? I'm kind of like taking a break, so I guess you could say I'm mid-career retired. I ride everything, but I tend to avoid cars. So that basically means gravel or mountain biking. But I'd love to ride two places. It just doesn't, it's not worth the risk. Yeah, the biggest barrier is basically safety with relation to cars. I was hit by a car when I lived in San Francisco, and I kept riding, but I just made it very clear that legislation and even what happens after an accident is very hostile to bicyclists. So it really put the damper on biking on the road, but I'd love to ride also for transportation.
Thanks so much.
So, thank you.
And I see Chuck just got in. Chuck, we're just going around doing introductions for people, so I'll get to you after we go through this list here. Okay, thanks so much.
Sure.
Tyler, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is Tyler Dibble. I live in Glenwood in Eastern Centerville, and spend my day working from my little dungeon here in the backyard. And I've got 3 little kids under 10. I mostly mountain bike these days and ride with my kids around the neighborhood to school and to the grocery store and things like that. Have spent a lot of time in my life riding road bikes as well. So kind of recovering from that, but still do it occasionally. Biggest barrier to bikes is really with the family and being comfortable with the kids around cars and on local streets. So I'm quite comfortable personally. That is perhaps a misplaced comfort, if I'm being honest, but it is true. But it's more about not being able to ride with the family and do the things we want to do by bike due to not being comfortable with them on city streets.
Thanks, Tyler. Bill, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Bill Bacon. It's nice to see everybody today. I live in Terra Linda as well. I work actually in transportation, so that's how I spend my day. I primarily ride either for transportation or for recreation, but I typically ride for transportation, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 times over the course of the week. I primarily work from home, so not so much for commuting as I used to in earlier phases of my life, but yeah, I would say more of the balance on the transportation side than for recreation. And in terms of the biggest barriers, I think my family, we're generally fairly comfortable riding around in the neighborhood, but when you start to get, you need to travel through large intersections. That's where I think San Rafael does, the Bay Area generally does a pretty poor job of making riders feel safe. And I think that's one of the bigger obstacles we have. It's just lots of really auto prioritized intersections. Anything that involves Highway 101 in Marin is just a terrible place to be on a bicycle. And unfortunately, Highway 101 is sort of our artery. So yeah, but it's great to see everybody. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bill. Don?
Me? Oh, I'm Don Magdans. I live in Gerstle Park. I'm retired and I work about 40 hours a week from home. I basically ride around town. I've got a TerraTrike. I'm pretty well down a lot on cycling. There's no real barriers except my body as far as riding is concerned. But I am very well connected with the board over the years. I've been on the board since I was on the MCBC board since 2008. So I've got a lot of history to look at for what we've been doing in the past.
Great, thanks, Don. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe Mulligan, and I live in Glenwood, also very close to where Tyler is located. I am trying my hand at retirement a little early, just to see if that works out. And as a result, I am interested in getting more involved with local teams, advocacy, and safer routes for bike riding, because I do a lot of road riding, specifically with the Marin cyclists. A lot of those folks are retired and they do weekday rides, and I'll do the weekend rides with them as well. I also enjoy bike packing and gravel riding, but while those are fun and safe, the biggest barrier I think for me is Point San Pedro, where both Tyler and I live close to. And it's that section, there's a lot of sections without bike lanes, but the crux of it really to me is you're in a bike lane, you're not in a bike lane, you have to go out of what's parking into a lane of traffic. There's sharrows there, but the cars don't expect it. So it's that disruption that that I'm looking to help. It's a big crusade for me, and I want to become as active as I can doing that. My wife also likes to bike, but she's not as seasoned with the roads. So in general, if there can be more bike lanes throughout the county, then I can get her out on the road more.
So thanks, Joe. Dave, you want to go ahead?
Yep. Hey, thanks, Warren, for putting this together. My name is Dave Rhodes. I live in the West End with my family, a wife, and a 4.5-month-old. And during the day, which extends a lot to the evenings, I work as the head of workplace and real estate for a 1,000-person tech company. So I'm very dialed into place and commuting and how things are designed. I studied architecture and city planning, so I'm very interested in this both professionally and personally. On a personal level, I'm very motivated to try to get around Marin and San Rafael specifically by bike more. We just purchased an e-bike instead of a second car. I'm trying to do a lot of my local trips by e-bike, trying to get my family on that bike a lot more. But I bike recreationally as well, on road and off road. And I think the biggest barrier is just the conflict between cycling and and a lot of, most drivers who don't really, aren't really thinking about other users of the road. And I say the other users because it is not just cycling, but pedestrians. Where I live, there's not always sidewalks, and we walk to our child's daycare and whatnot. And I think that's, I just really want to improve the experience for all users of our public streets, to be a lot safer. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm really motivated to see my child bike to school in 5 short years, and I'd like to see that be as safe as possible. I'd love to see that for all ages, not just him, but and us. So really excited to be here. I'm really excited to help. I volunteer a lot with MCBC, and I'm really impressed by the work that the coalition does. So yeah, thanks.
Great.
Good to see everybody.
Thanks a bunch, Dave. And Chuck, go ahead.
Sure, my name is Chuck. I live on the west side of the freeway from the Civic Center. So Los Ranchitos is the neighborhood. Most of my day I spend as a commercial construction consultant and a parent to 2 small kids. I mostly ride dirt, either up at China Camp or some of the ridges around, pretty much mostly dirt. So I access dirt via roads, but I prefer riding dirt to anything. The biggest barrier to me riding is obviously having 2 small kids under 3. But the biggest barrier to riding with those small kids is where we live is like, we're so close to the bike path that goes along the railroad along Los Ranchitos, but to get from my house to that bike path is super sketchy. And it's ridiculous. I've been trying to work with the county to try and get a crosswalk or something installed to get from my house over there, but so far no luck, but they've been actually responsive. But I've been, donating and going to MCBC things since I moved up here. And so far, it's been a great group to be a part of. So I'm also excited.
Awesome. Happy to have you here, Chuck. Cool.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much. Really, really great to hear from everybody. Some people I know already, some new faces. So great to see some folks out here. So next, I want to run through, just kind of do a quick run through and what is this whole local team thing we're talking about? I had the blog post, but just gonna, you had an FL? Cool. So just gonna do a run through, what we're imagining this program is gonna look like. So fundamentally, we're borrowing this from one of our peer groups, the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. They're another really well-respected organization. They span 2 counties and 30 some cities in the South Bay, Santa Clara and San Mateo County. They've been running this program for a number of years. Most teams based on cities, though some teams based on projects. So in their case, El Camino Real, though in our case, I'm imagining a team for the Golden Gate Bridge or a team for the Smart Pathway, longer term goals in addition to the cities, to talk about some of that interregional connectivity. It's a really successful program. They've had a ton of very, very, very important impacts down there. I talked to their, my counterpart there, their advocacy director, and they've had wins getting bike lanes on El Camino Real, which is, the Caltrans owned road, super challenging. They've had fights where they've had challenges where they've reallocated hundreds of parking spaces to put in bike lanes, stuff that kind of we can only dream of here. They have 12 teams. Each one has, between 5 and 15 regular members who meet on a monthly basis, though they have kind of a much larger group of people on each team's mailing list. And actually, I just tuned into their monthly meeting just before this one to kind of snoop around and be a fly on the wall. And so they have kind of a hour-long sort of training or lecture session, and then they'll break out into their different groups, and they have all their groups going and a bunch of people talking about meetings with council members and comments on plans and really, really cool stuff. And a really great, hopefully a vision of the future for what we can do here in Marin. So all this to say, so we're adopting this model because it's been really effective, and we've seen some of the limitations to what we can do in an organization of 9 people across a county of a 250,000 and with 11 cities. We need to be expanding our input and helping train up people to be biketivists themselves, and to like I was saying earlier, to connect that local knowledge and connections with the expertise that we have in the advocacy and policy side. So there's kind of 2 halves to this. I'm going to first talk about what we're going to do, and the second half is kind of talk what you all and people like you in San Rafael can do. So our job is helping find interested people. You know, we have 20,000 people on our mailing list. There's a ton of people in Marin who are interested in doing this, who just need a hand up, who don't know, might not know how to get involved in local government, but have the interest. And whether you have 5 minutes a month or 5 hours a month, we can use you. We're going to be leading trainings on helping people, you and your neighbors, become effective advocates, learning how to speak the language of city council, learning how to speak the language of engineers. So you'll be able to actually understand what people are talking about and actually ask good probing questions and not have them kind of snow you with a bunch of terminology and hope you go away. We'll be assisting in the goal setting and then also strategies to achieve those goals. We'll be providing the resources of MCBC, so technical support, advice, talking points, materials, IT, letting you set up a Zoom meeting with a council member, so you don't have to have that stuff on your own, as well as our social media and marketing, access to our big email list. And we'll be starting small with just one team here in San Rafael, and as staffing allows, hoping to expand and working out the kinks here and hoping to expand that elsewhere. And so what we're looking for from people in the community is the ability to meet regularly. We can do this. Silicon Valley encourages their teams to meet every month, but that can be every 2 months, to help grow the team, to talk to people who go to kids' schools or are in your writing group, or through work, to try to get people who might be interested in doing this work to at least get on the mailing list, so they can write an email to council and kind of maybe come to a social ride, maybe eventually join a meeting. We want to try to build a team that represents diversity of San Rafael, age, gender, race. Have different interest in riding, recreational riding. People want to ride with kids. I think we have a lot of that already here tonight. So we're not just like the big bad lycra-clad bike lobby, that we are representing the people of San Rafael. We want to build partnerships, with whether it's your church group or a civic group or an environmental group. How can do we have someone who's on sustainable San Rafael who can help get a letter of support from them for this project? We want to develop leaders, and that's kind of this means coming to our trainings about how to become a biketivist, how to learn how your city is working and understand where those levers are. We want to be setting achievable short-term and longer-term goals. Really important that we value everyone's time. I'm trying to do that tonight with a schedule and get you guys out of here on time. But this means our meetings will have an agenda ahead of time. We'll take notes. We'll record meetings for people who can't be there, and understand that we should stay on topic. Because everyone's busy and most everybody is doing this on their volunteer time. So thank you for doing that. I want to make sure that everyone knows they can ask for help when needed. That's what we're here for. This is my job. I'm not doing this for free. We're here to provide support. We want to give you the hand up, we want to give you any assistance we can to do the work that you need to do in San Rafael. And lastly, we're here to have fun. Ideally, we would have been in a bar tonight. I'm glad some people grabbed a drink. But a lot of people come into this because of love of biking, whether it's love of recreational biking or love of transportation. So getting around a city by bike, which is just a more fun way to travel. So this looks like this will be a way to get more people in, having social rides, having rides to ice cream or group rides with the team. So that's kind of my quick presentation on what the team will look like, or sort of what we're imagining for this local team. And so I'd love to take some questions if people have them. Then I'm going to go through what the next steps are going forward. Then I'll let you all go.
I think all of our questions are what are the next steps?
Okay, cool. Well, I'll skip to the next one, then we'll go back to this one. Yeah. So first, this is this is just sort of a meeting number 0 for the San Rafael local team. Just making sure that if I put this call out there and like literally no one showed up to anything, it's like, well, the time's not right. But we have more than 0 people here. And there were a few people who texted me today and so they couldn't make it. So there's people who are interested in this. So what we're going to be doing, so we started, hopefully all of you all are on the Google group. That's just kind of a very quick way of, everyone has email. Maybe that's not everyone's preferred means of communication, but everyone's on the Google group. So San Rafael at marinbike.org is the email address to that. So that's the way we'll be communicating with people going forward. If you know other people who would be interested in this, you should share that. And I'll send this out to the group afterwards. Share the interest form. That's an interest form for being a local team. If you're in San Rafael, that's the team that's starting now. If you're somewhere else in Marin, we're going to keep track of who's interested and kind of like let them know when a local team is starting up in their area. And then we're going to be having our first training. I'm planning to do it next month. So for those that didn't hear, I'm getting married very shortly and I'll be out of the office for a bit after that, but I'll be back after that. And so we're having a thank you. We're having a training on Wednesday, June 29th. And so that'll be like an advocacy 101 training. That's just to be like, if you don't know anything about local government in Marin, this is gonna be a huge brain dump about here's how it all works. And actually at that meeting, I'm gonna have a guest speaker who is one of the team leads of, I believe he's in the San Mateo local team, who actually, I saw him speak at a conference last month, and is a really, really smart, well-spoken guy. And so he can talk about some of the successes we've seen there too. So that's kind of the immediate next steps. But just want to get my face in front of people, let y'all know this is happening, and give people a chance to answer any questions, ask questions.
I have a question.
Warren, I do have one question.
Oh, go ahead.
As you know, I do mainly state and national advocacy, and it relies on large part on people who are doing local advocacy, but carve out a little bit of their time to do that kind of advocacy. And I'm wondering if there's a place for that in these teams, or whether it's going to be exclusively local work.
So I'm thinking that's going to be more local work for these teams. I think that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this. In my capacity as working countywide, I want to keep working with you. I want to make sure that we're, if you have a blog post you want me to put up, or if you want me to help. I filled at the NCAP for MCBC. I haven't sent it out to our mailing list because it's kind of wonky to explain. There's been a lot of other stuff going on, but I'm always happy to help out with this stuff. And we want to be MCBC. We want MCBC to be a player at the state level, supporting. We've put in our letters of support for the speed safety camera bill, and a bunch of other bills. And I just actually spoke to Assemblymember Levine's office last week to tell him all the bills that we're supporting. So we're doing that work at an organizational level, but I think that the local team will really be focused on stuff kind of within the four corners of San Rafael. And that's, there's overlap in terms of people's interest, but that's what these meetings will be about. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just thinking, Warren, is there a, one of the things that's coming up is, I think probably next month is the next BPAC meeting. Do you want to mention anything about that, or is it too early to kind of mention that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm, I don't know what is going to be on the agenda for that, but so for those that don't know, this will be kind of one of the things we'll talk about in these advocacy trainings, is that many cities, about half the cities in Marin, have what is called a Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which is an official committee of the local government that meets either monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly to review kind of plans and policies developed by staff and give their kind of first pass on them, and then give their advice, then pass on their advice to city council. And so San Rafael has an active and very functional, I mean, not to disparage anyone, a very good BPAC, a very involved BPAC that meets once every 2 months. Phil, who was on here earlier, is a member of that body. And so, it's always worth, it's always where when I lived in Oakland, I would regularly tune into the BPAC. It's a good way of kind of seeing what's going on before it goes on. So certainly, I'm imagining this group will definitely, keep an eye on the BPAC agendas, hopefully sending a couple members there if there's a particularly important item at the BPAC, getting support or opposition if need be. But that'll be something that this group will be monitoring in addition to City Council.
Thanks, Warren.
I have a question. What do the typical tasks for group members look like?
Yeah, so that's going to be, it'll really vary. So, and kind of so at the very beginning, I think that goal setting is going to be really important. So, kind of after we have a group of, after people have decided, yeah, this is something I want to stick around in, we've done kind of some basic kind of training on the sort of structure of how San Rafael city government works. We'll have a meeting where we'll go through and figure out what are the 2 or 3 goals, the 2 or 3 large policy goals this, the San Rafael local team would like to achieve the next year. And that's going to take a while to kind of, because there's a million things you could do, right? We have a lot to fix everywhere in Marin. And we can't say well, make it a bike utopia, because there's just a lot of pieces that go into that. So we'll pick a couple. And then from there, once we've picked those, then we have a whole lot of sort of strategies and tactics within those to achieve that goal. So say it's, I'm trying to think of something, very good and achievable. Okay, for instance, so so let's say it's putting protected bike lanes on Bellin Boulevard, which is it's currently planned, but not set in stone yet. So kind of all those strategies in there. So first things first is we need people who growing the group is always important. So we'll have people who are kind of who that's their job is new member recruitment. Then they're going to be someone whose job is, running the meetings. So setting an agenda before the meetings. There's going to be someone who will keep notes during the meeting. There's just to be someone who's kind of whose job it is to sort of welcome new members, kind of bring people up to speed. So those are kind of the jobs that we'll have sort of set on the team. But then as far as achieving particular goals, so say it's protected bike lanes on this street that we know is getting repaved in 2 years. That's going to be meeting with city council members. So meeting with the council member whose district it is, first and foremost, figuring out what their opinion on this is. Meeting with businesses who might live along that corridor, asking them, hey, can we get a letter of support? So I'm not sure if anyone, Tyler's here. So, with the Point San Pedro Road planned road diet that ended up being blocked or didn't happen. The fact that Dutra, the quarry owner at the end there, that they were opposed to it, they had put in a letter of opposition that loomed very large with the city councilman, with Councilmember Bushy. And so that's something that if we, frankly, and I want to kind of admit, we didn't do enough I didn't do enough organizing on that project. And so if we'd had more capacity, we would have gone to Andes, we would have gone to Dutra, we would have said, hey, here's a group of 10 people who live along here. We would love if you would support this pilot project. We know we might be worried about it, but we think it'll be okay. And if we can just go along these first 6 months and at the very least not oppose it, we'd really appreciate that. So meeting with people in the community, hosting fun rides, to get, because get more people to know about this group. Those are something that's kind of a long rambling answer, but hopefully that's answers that a little bit.
If I can just add a little bit to that. In the case of Point San Pedro Road, there were some meetings, and what we did early in this advocacy career in Marin County was to flood those meetings with people that were speaking from the cyclist community. So in addition to all these goals and all this kind of stuff, it's almost like we need a fire brigade that goes in on one of these meetings and puts in, 10 or 15 people that are speaking for it, because all the city council responds to numbers. It's as simple as that. If you get a bunch of people in a room, and that's what's happened with Point San Pedro Road, from what I can tell, is a bunch of neighbors got in there and screamed and yelled, do it, you scream and yell, and all of a sudden the project's gone. We need to get in there and scream and yell as much as these other people are doing. Otherwise, they're going to outscream us.
Thanks, Don. Couldn't have said it better myself. And then that's the point, that it's kind of like, it's so obvious that I just kind of didn't cover it. Like, we need to have people saying yes for things, because people, it's unfortunately, it really is all politics, as Tyler and I kind of heard at this meeting a few weeks ago. Like, the city had no substantial opposition to the project. They just said too many people said no, which again was like 60 or 70 people in a city of 60,000, but that was enough. And so, we need, like, fundamentally, we need to be having people saying yes. And that doesn't even mean people, those people who are doing that don't actually have to be people necessarily who are meeting every month to do this goal setting. That has to be your friends who we can text, or we can send an automatic text to, or send an email saying like, hey, there's this meeting at 7 p.m. We need you on here for half an hour, just to call in, Zoom in, and say like, yeah, bike lane's great, and then hang up. So that's like, those are people, like the devoted people who do that. And we can also get some people who are who don't quite have as much time every month, but who are willing to be a butt in a chair and say yes to bike lanes, because without that, we lose. Thank you, Don.
I have a question. This is about voting with the elections in June. While I understand that MCBC is not able to make a statement on candidates, I do know that you have a survey. So is it possible that amongst ourselves, we're able to communicate to kind of, I don't know, pick the candidates that are bike friendly, that is not associated with MCBC, but still take advantage of the fact that we're all together kind of sharing our reactions? And if you don't want to comment on this, that's okay too.
No, I mean, I think I can give advice, right? So the key thing is, as Joe noted, is that MCBC is currently structured as a 501c3 nonprofit, and thus we cannot do candidate endorsements. We can do ballot measure endorsements, as we have endorsed Measure A. We can also do candidate questionnaires, as you will see we have posted. Everyone should check it out, because most people should be in Damon's district, District 1. We can do candidate questionnaires. What we can't do is endorse candidates. That's not to say that people who are MCBC volunteers cannot do their own stuff. It just can't be on our staff time, which is fine, because none of you work for MCBC. And can't have our letterhead on it. If you wanted to say like the biker's election guide of Marin, like, sure, like, cool, like, that's great. And the fact that you guys know each other through our meeting, that's fine. It just can't, I can't do work on it, and it cannot, like, we wouldn't want any of those files like stored on our Google Drive, which we'll give you guys use of. So there just needs to be a real firewall between those two things to answer that question.
Thank you. To be specific, should it not appear on our mailing list, our group?
Yeah, I think that, yeah, definitely not, because that's Marin, that's like Sanderfell at marinbike.org. So that's a Google group that we own and manage. So it would be something that would need to be distributed in other ways.
For example, somebody that could potentially have a group of the people's emails list having a separate group?
Sure, that would be totally fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
cool. Thanks.
I think that's a really good idea, to have a separate group of an advisory from MCBC on an informal basis. That would solve the problem of us endorsing certain candidates. But the division there is, we need a leader outside of MCBC right now. Warren is that leader. And that would mean us to set up our own little organization that doesn't have to have government approval or anything like that. But then we could go out and do things. And so that's the other way of structuring this, but it may not be effective unless we have the leadership to do that.
Yeah, and so just kind of like follow up on this, Joe. So in terms of like the group that we are trying to start here in San Rafael, that would not be one that would, whenever we end up calling that, whether San Rafael Local Team or like Bike San Rafael or whatever, you have, So like the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, some of their local teams have like rebranded. There's one called Bike Sunnyvale. It's not its own nonprofit. It's just the group that meets, the group of SVBC members that meets every month. That group, the way we are structuring this, because this would be involving a lot of staff time and support, would not be one that would do endorsements. Again, that's not to say that the same group of people couldn't, under some other banner, do them. It just has to be separate from us.
Sounds fair. Thank you.
Yeah, bike riders in Marin, great. Cool. Any other questions? Great. Well, so thank you all for, I'm letting you off a little early tonight. Thank you all so much for coming out. It's really great to see old faces and new here. Like I said, I'll be sending a follow-up email, which will have a link, another link to that interest survey. If you know someone in San Rafael who would be or in Marin anywhere who might be interested in a local team, send that their way. Make sure I think I double checked everyone is on the Google group, so that should be fine. And look out for the info about that upcoming training. You can put it on your calendar now, 7 p.m. Wednesday, June 29th, which are Advocacy 101. If you missed that, it will be recorded, so you can catch it on the replay. And as always, you can always get in touch with me. My email is warren@marinbike.org. So I really appreciate everyone taking some time out of their day tonight. I hope you have a lovely evening, and hopefully we can get a in-person, get that beer, get a rain check on that beer sometime soon. So cool. All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Warren.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, Warren.
Thanks.
Good to meet
Warren.
everybody.
Yeah.